you what we have planned for you in this new approach, and we hope that that will work. I would like to introduce our moderator, Melissa Allgood from our team, who will also be talking to us throughout the process in this new approach that will allow you to meet some new members of the team that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, as well as hearing the substantive work that our group is doing to support your efforts in the policy and advice work. So with that, let me thank you and turn it over to Melissa for the next part of this.
Thanks, David. So we have changed the format just a little bit for you guys today. The plan is this. We're going to engage in some quick discussions with policy team members who support and collaborate with each SONAC. For those of you that have questions, the first 3 raised hands that pop up in the Zoom room, those questions we will take immediately after that short, rapid conversation. But have no fear. If we don't get to your question immediately after that presenter, or if you put your question in the chat, we have a panel Q&A after all presenters. So we will get back to your and before we dive in, I just want to ask for a bit of patience as we're trying something new here today. There's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes that are you as well. So with that, David, let's begin with the Address Supporting Organization. This is an advisory body that reviews and develops recommendations on IP address policy and advises the Icann board on global policy issues relating to the operation, allocation, and management of IP addresses. I would like to welcome Carlos Reyes from the policy team to discuss what is happening with the ASO. Hi, Carlos.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
Let's dive right in. What are the areas of priority for the ASO right now?
So I think you did a good job explaining the scope of the ASO, and it's important to keep in mind this, this remit of global policies related to internet number resources. There's a lot of activity happening at the regional level. The regional internet registry communities have been meeting also virtually in the past year to continue developing their policies. So even though we do not see a lot of activity at the global level here within Icann and at the Icann public meetings, there's still a lot of work taking place. So there will be no sessions during Icann 71. You'll see members of the numbers community participating in our sessions, particularly the plenary sessions, and other areas that perhaps overlap with technical or security topics that also impact the allocation of internet number resources.
Well, and Carlos, to that end, since there aren't any scheduled ASO sessions on the calendar, if people are interested in learning more about the work of the ASO, where would you suggest they go?
Great question, Melissa. The ASO recently updated its website. So the website, it's much easier to navigate. There's an improved user experience. So I recommend anyone interested in the ASO take a look at the website. It breaks down the difference between the Address Supporting Organization and the Address Council, which manages the global policy development process for the ASO, and provides information about other responsibilities of the ASO, including appointing members of the Icann board. Just yesterday, the ASO announced that it had completed the selection process for board seat 9. And the NomCom, the Icann nominating committee, there's a nomination period currently underway for the new delegate from the ASO to the Icann nominating committee.
Great information, Carlos. And I see that Miriam dropped some links in the chat that people can utilize if they want to learn more about this work. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. If anybody has any questions for Carlos about the work of the ASO, please raise your hand. Miriam, I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'd like to just verify that that's the case before I move on.
That's correct, Melissa. Thank you.
All right. Going, gone. All right, Carlos. Well, thank you for joining us. And we're going to move on to the Country Code Names Supporting Organization. The CCNSO is responsible for developing and recommending to Icann's board global policies relating to country code top-level domains. It also provides a platform for the Cctld community to develop best practices, exchange information, and discuss relevant global issues. So to talk to us about CCNSO activities, we have Yoka Breakin. Hi, Yoka.
Hi, Melissa. Hello, everyone.
Let's jump into the work that the CCNSO is presently focused on. What is of interest?
Thank you for the question. So as David Olive already mentioned during his introduction, there are some important CCNSO policy development process ongoing at the moment. And there are really three key concepts that I would like to highlight here. Firstly, the retirement of Cctlds. There is a working group that has been working hard for the past 4 years on policy recommendations. And at Ican 71, the CCNSO Council is expected to adopt those recommendations. If that happens, then those recommendations will go to the CCNSO membership for voting for elections. So this is really an important phase in the work of this group. But there are some other policy development processes as well, such as the one on the review mechanisms for decisions regarding the delegation, the transfer, the revocation, and the retirement of Cctlds. The group that is working on those recommendations will take part in a CCNSO policy session at Ican 71 and will give an update on where they are and will consult a little bit on their progress. And then finally, there's one policy development process within the CCNSO that I would like to highlight today. And that is the one that is working on the deselection and selection of IDN Cctld strings. And they will be pleased to give an update at Ican 71 and to consult the community on where they are and what their direction of travel is.
Lovely. Now, you mentioned that the CCNSO Council has some work in front of it for the Ican 71 session. Does the Council plan to meet during our meeting week?
Yes, indeed. So the Council plans to meet towards the end of the meeting week. This meeting is open to all that have an interest in attending, so feel free to join us.
Are there any other CCNSO sessions that you'd like to highlight, draw some attention to?
There's a number of sessions that are interesting to the community. We start actually with Tech Day, followed by a number of sessions as part of the CCNSO members meeting. They're again open to all. First one is a session on the governance of the country code name supporting organization. And this is really about the role between Council and the CCNSO members. Then we have a question and answer session with Cctld related Ican board members. And then, of course, this policy session that I spoke about earlier today, where the CCNSO policy development processes will be happy to give an update and consult with the community. There's also one committee, CCNSO committee, the Strategic and Operational Planning Committee, that is meeting as well as part of the Ican week. And otherwise, the CCNSO continues its work as usual outside of the Ican week.
Sounds like it's going to be quite busy. I'd like to circle back to one thing you touched on, and that is Tech Day. Can you explain to us a bit about what this session is about and who typically attends?
So Tech Day has been on the public meeting agenda already since 2006. And it is organized by a CCNSO working group. It is open to everybody that has an interest in technical security related topics. Some topics that usually are being covered during Tech Day are DNSSEC or maybe Dns Abuse mitigation efforts. So even though this is a CCNSO working group that organizes Tech Day, it is open to all that have an interest in those technical security operational topics.
Lovely. Thank you for that explanation. And finally, do you have any tips or suggestions for preparing for the policy forum?
So I would like to recommend everybody to have a look at the Ccnso workspace. All information is available there regarding the Ccnso schedule. And also perhaps a good idea to subscribe to the monthly Ccnso newsletter. So if you would like to stay informed about what is happening within the country code name supporting organization, that would be a good source.
And Yoke, will you drop those links into chat to help
Definitely.
out? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So questions for Yoke? I'm not seeing any. Please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question. Miriam, I'm going to come back to you to confirm that I'm not missing anything.
No, you're not, Melissa.
All right. Well, if you have questions, save them for the panel at the end. We're going to go ahead and say goodbye to Yoke, and we are going to move on to the GNSO, the Generic Name Supporting Organization. This is the policy-making body responsible for generic top-level domains. And to discuss the work of this community, I welcome Julie Headland. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Melissa. Sorry, I was on mute.
No problem. The GNSO is quite busy, and this is a policy forum. So let's dive right in. Let's start with the Epdp on the temporary specification for GTLD data registration Phase 2A, known more commonly as the Epdp Phase 2A. Where does this working group presently stand?
Thank you so much, Melissa. So there have been some new developments with the Epdp Phase 2A, and specifically coming out very shortly in June now, they'll be publishing their initial report. And so there will be an opportunity at Icann 71 for them to present that report, an overview of it, and answer any questions that the community may have. So that will be a very important development, and we're really looking forward to that session.
And that session is on the traditional schedule.
Correct? It is indeed on the traditional schedule, yes.
Lovely.
And we'll post that information in the chat for all of you.
Fantastic, thank you. So I'd like to circle back to some of the few longstanding PDPs that have recently submitted their final reports, specifically SubPro and RPM. Where do each of these projects presently stand?
So yes, there is a new development on both of these topics, and they're moving along at a good pace. The rights protection mechanisms, or RPMs, as you mentioned, that PDP and the new GTLD subsequent procedures, or SubPro PDP, both of them have submitted their adopted recommendations or outputs to the Icann board. They've also each conducted public comment proceedings. And those proceedings and the results of them will help to provide supporting information to the Icann board as it considers the final reports of these two PDPs and their outputs and recommendations.
So it sounds like it's a stay tuned situation.
It is definitely that.
All right. Now, it's also my understanding that the GNSO Council has been quite busy initiating new PDPs since we were all last together at Icann 70. Can you tell us more about these efforts?
Yes, I can, and happy to. So we've got a couple, two precisely new PDPs that the council has initiated. So first of all, we have the Transfer Policy Review PDP, and that PDP is just starting to meet, and they will have a session at Icann 71. And in particular, what they'll be doing is they're going to look for some broader community input on the topics in their charter. So just starting out there, and so a chance for the community to get on board and see what's going on right at the beginning of that policy development process. The second initiative is an expedited PDP, an EPDP on international domain names, IDNs. And that PDP's charter was recently approved by the council, and there's a call for expression of interest for the members of that group So while the working group is not yet constituted, there will be an outreach session at Icann 71. And during that session, it will be an opportunity to provide additional information about the mission and scope, and also how to get involved in that PDP. So also a very good opportunity for people to get involved right at the start of a PDP.
Well, and it looks like Ariel and Steve have been dropping links into the chat supporting what you're discussing. So sounds like we're giving everybody directions of places to go if they're interested in that work. Now, this is a policy session. This is the policy forum. So are there other GNSO highlights that we can expect, sessions you'd like to draw some attention to?
First of all, it's important for everybody to note that the GNSO Council will definitely be meeting at Icann 71 as they normally do. They'll be meeting throughout the Icann 71, including a working session, a virtual working session, their regular public meeting, and then also a wrap-up session. And in addition, they're going to be meeting during Icann 71 jointly with the GAC. And then the week following Icann 71, they will be meeting with the Icann Board of Directors.
So just to clarify, all of those GNSO Council sessions that you mentioned, are they all open or are any of those closed?
All those sessions are open, as they always are.
Great. And then you mentioned that GNSO Council is meeting with the board after Icann 71. Do we know the date of that meeting?
Yes, that will be on June 24th, and we can put a link to that in the chat as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Do you have any other tips or suggestions on how to best prepare for the policy forum?
I do indeed. And I see that very helpfully a link to the GNSO policy briefing is in the chat. So please do look at that. And that is the best way, I think, to get up to speed on the various initiatives under the GNSO at Icann 71. But of course, you can always look at the GNSO content on the website as well to see where all the different initiatives stand, and of course the various wikis of the different groups.
Thank you so much, Julie. I'm going to open it up for questions. Does anyone have a question for Julie? Please raise your hand. I'm not seeing any. Miriam, I'm going to circle back to you to make sure that I'm not missing anything.
No, Melissa, you are not.
I see a question.
That question in chat?
Yes. From Nigel Dixon?
Why not? We're learning as we go. We'll go ahead and take Nigel's question, Julie, if you want to.
Nigel says, thank you. Can you say a bit more about the subpro timetable in terms of board consideration and the paternal ODP, operational design phase? So I can say that the GNSO has requested that the board initiate an operational design phase. And as we previously mentioned, the next step is for the board to consider the outputs from the subpro PDP. And until that happens, it's difficult for us to give a further timetable. We do need to have that step happen and see the ODP initiated, and then we'll have a better sense of where we stand.
And Nigel, hopefully that answered your question. If it did not, please raise your hand. Oh, I see a thank you. All right. Any other questions for Julie? Okay, Julie, I'm going to let you go, and we are going to move on to the at-large. Now, the at-large advisory committee, the Alac, provides advice to the Icann board. The Alac is a subset of the larger at-large community, which is a group of is constituted by, a ground-up tiered structure that's organized regionally. This community is focused on the end user. And to discuss at-large activities, I am now joined by Gisela Gruber and Heidi Ulrich. Hello to you both.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Melissa.
So Gisela, I'm going to go to you first. It's my understanding that the at-large community has a number of sessions planned for the intersessional week That is next week, beginning on June 7th, before the meeting officially begins. Can you talk to us about those?
Yes, thank you, Melissa, and thank you for the questions. So we have intersessional week next week. We're taking advantage of that week to not overload this Ican prep week, and also to use the week that is actually between the prep week and Ican 71. So we have we also have flash tour of Ican and at large by Uralo. That's going to be a two-hour session, which is led by the Uralo chair, Sébastien Bachelet. He has invited several guest speakers from the various groups within Ican, including the Ican board. And this is an opportunity to ask questions and discuss the various flash presentations that they will be giving in further detail in breakout rooms. And those will be in 4 different languages: English, French, Spanish, and Russian. So this is quite an innovative session, and we're very much looking forward to it. And then third but not last, we have the outreach and engagement session, which is led by the chair of the working group, Daniel Nangaka, and also the European representative, Natalia Felina from the European region. And this session will have a presentation of the 2 at-large Ican Learn courses, a review of the FY21 outreach and engagement activities, and again, a new way of setting up the session. We're going to then go into breakout rooms to discuss the FY22 outreach and engagement plans with local GSE staff joining us.
Lovely to see that those sessions are slated to be so interactive with the breakout rooms. So before we get into the following week, technically Ican 71, I thought I'd ask Heidi if there have been any developments since Ican 70 that you'd like to note.
Yes, very much so. Thank you for the question, Melissa. So really, at-large has hit its stride in working effectively during this pandemic. They've adapted innovative and creative ways to work efficiently in a virtual world. And there are 3 of these I'd like to really highlight. The first is in how efficient they've been. And the first is that they were able to submit 5 policy advice statements between Ican 70 and right now. So that's quite a bit. And also they submitted a piece of advice to the board on the subsequent procedures final report. And they don't submit too much advice. So that's quite an achievement. Also, during this period, Ican at-large was really happy to launch 2 at-large Ican Learn courses. And the first was an introduction to at-large. It was called Welcome to Our World. And the second is a policy development course. So even if you're familiar with at-large or if you're new to at-large, these courses will really be of interest to you. And then thirdly, both at the at-large level and the regional level, at-large has a series of capacity building webinars. At the at-large level, the first one of the webinars, Melissa, as you know, you hosted or you presented on, and that was the consensus playbook, a very popular session there. And then the other sessions have really helped them build their skills in how to adapt to the virtual world. And you've seen this during Ican 70, some of the innovative ways that they were able to use their presentations, their PowerPoints, et cetera. You saw a live presentation during a dance from Cancun, and Gisela will highlight a little bit of that soon. And then at the regional level, most all of the RELOs now have used their monthly meetings, shifted that to have capacity building webinars and excellent speakers on current topics that pertain to Ican and at-large.
Thanks for sharing more detail about how at-large is adjusting to the pandemic. It's always interesting to see how every part of the community is shifting and evolving on that front. So before we get into the Ican 71 policy sessions, I thought it would be worthwhile for you to explain briefly how at-large structures its work. It's 3 tracks, if you will.
Sure, perfect. Yes, and this is really under the chair, Maureen Hilliard. This is her initiative, and at-large is now divided into 3 tracks. And this has really helped with their efficiency and understanding where activities fit. So as you mentioned, there are 3 tracks. The first one is the policy track. And the key working group here is the Consolidated Policy Working Group that meets weekly. And it really has grown in its depth and scope of what they discuss. The second track is the outreach and engagement track. So the first part is outreach, and then they're reaching out, at-large members reach out to potential new members, both inside the community as well as outside the community. And then the engagement, or what they call in-reach, is really trying to focus on capacity building, skills, and engagement, and how to, for current members. And then the third track is the operations track, and that focuses on activities pertaining to Icann, finance, budget, and operational issues.
Well, let's lean into the policy track because it's a policy forum. So what specifically does At-Large have planned, what sessions at Icann 71 with regard to their policy work?
Yeah, great question. And again, this really links back to how efficient they've been in this virtual world. I believe this is a record. They are going to be holding 5 policy sessions.
Wow.
And 4 will be at large, and 1 will be hosted by the European Regional At-Large Organization, given that the meeting is hosted virtually in the Netherlands. The first at-large policy session will be on Monday, and that will explore end-user participation in Icann PDPs and their role within the Icann ecosystem. On Tuesday, there will be 2. The first will be a session on the various Cctld governance models, and it'll have testimonies by at-large members on their experience with these different models. The second one on Tuesday will be a session on the potential impact that advancing GDPR compliance with the use of technology will have on end users. On Wednesday, there'll be a session on developing regional policy measures in the field of DNS abuse, which will look at 2 recent regulatory proposals. And finally, there'll be a Urello a policy session hosted, and this will be on new GTLDs and the protection of geographical names within Europe.
Fantastic.
And again, all of these, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you for that. Fantastic. And I see that Evan's dropping into the chat the links for all of those sessions. Is there anything else anyone should do to prepare for the policy forum itself, Heidi?
Yes, so there are lots of ways. We have an at-large, the wiki page or workspace that perhaps Evan can post in there. Again, for next week, as Gisel's already mentioned, there's an overview webinar. Please do look at that one. That will have an overview of all of the activities happening during Icann 71. Obviously, there's the policy outlook that is already out, so that'll have a lot of information as well.
All right. Thank you for that, Heidi. I am looking to the chat to see if we have any questions. I'm not seeing any raised hands. Please raise your hand if you have any question for the at-large team. Miriam, do you see any questions?
No, there are no questions in the chat and no raised hands at this time. Thank you.
Well, with that, we're going to say goodbye to Gisela and Heidi. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are going to move on to the Governmental Advisory Committee. The GAC serves as the voice of governments and international governmental organizations in the Icann world. And I welcome Rob Hogarth. Hi, Rob.
Hello, Melissa. Thanks for having me today. I'm sorry I forgot my marshmallows, but maybe next time.
So, Rob, can you share with us what are current GAC priorities?
Thanks. The GAC priorities are fairly consistent and have been during our virtual world over the last year or so. Clearly, subsequent rounds of new GTLDs is a major topic that cuts across a wide variety of issues for GAC members. Secondly, there's DNS abuse. Again, a common theme you'll hear among these various top 4 topics is they all interrelate or all connect in some way in overlapping ways. In addition to DNS abuse mitigation, there's IGO protections, an area where there's a lot of activity, not only at the board level, but also within the GNSO. And then there's, of course, the GNSO EPDP, with respect to registration, directory, and data services, who and privacy. So that remains a real top priority as well for GAC members. All of these topics are going to be explored at the upcoming Icann 71 meeting. There will actually be 2 sessions with respect to subsequent rounds and single sessions for the others, and they'll be coming up throughout the week. There will actually be conversations about these issues as well during the Icann board and GAC meeting that traditionally takes place during the meeting week.
Sounds like the GAC's going to be busy during Icann 71. I wanted to ask you something that the at-large team just touched on, and they started sharing how their community has fared during the pandemic and going fully virtual. How has that been for the GAC community?
I think it's worked very well from a GAC perspective. When we all first got the news over a year ago about the Icann 67 meeting in Cancun, the GAC didn't miss a beat. With the exception of maybe paring back some number of the sessions to reflect the window, if you will, of the meeting, the GAC continued to operate as usual. And that's proven to be very effective because still, for the most part, of the 179 now members and 38 observing organizations in the GAC, most of the participants really focus on the meeting week. And so it's been very important, even in the virtual world, for us to be able to have robust programming and the full slate of issues that are important to governments to be discussed during the public meetings. The one change perhaps that took some time for adjustment was the decision on the part of GAC members as to whether to proceed to put GAC advice in the communiques. Until Icann 70, over the course of the pandemic, none of the communiques included GAC advice until Icann 70. The process was always in place, but I think it took some period of time for participants to become comfortable. As many of you who have observed the communique drafting sessions at Icann meetings know, they can become very intense. And there are frequent periods where groups gather in small sections to have conversations about particular points or sections of the communique. Frankly, that's been a little bit difficult in the virtual world. Now that we have tools like the one we're experimenting with today, and I don't know if we'll see the classroom later, there may be opportunities for us to have more of those real-time breakout discussions on a regular basis. The GAC has made use of that technology in a couple of different ways during the pandemic. That includes some of the work that they did with the Icann strategic team, where there were a couple of webinars where we had breakout rooms where discussants could participate and just have conversations and even put stickies up on the whiteboards that I know some of us in the community have experience with. So that's been really good. A real shout out to our tech team, our meeting support team, and our translators and interpreters who've really gone well beyond the call of duty to come up with innovative and really neat approaches, not only in the Zoom room experience here, but with interpretation tools. I've got the live transcription working down here at the bottom of my screen. So all of that has worked out very well and really been a benefit to GAC participants throughout the year.
Thank you for going into that level of detail, because I think that some of those infrastructure pieces can get kind of lost and you don't know what other communities are doing. So I appreciate the granular level of detail with that. I have one kind of other broad question for you about the GAC's work. And, we're hearing a lot about a host of recent recommendations that have come out, whether it's ATRT3, the Workstream 2 effort, the evolution of the multi-stakeholder model. How is the GAC addressing these matters? How are you navigating through this work?
Thanks. The GAC leadership took immediate action when a number of these recommendations came down the pike. As you know, they've all approached, and many other communities are dealing with this, they've approached at different angles and at different points in time. But one of the things that the GAC leadership acknowledged was that they all affected GAC operations in one way, shape, or form, whether it be the Workstream 2 recommendations or the ATRT3 suggestions, or even just the overall evolution of the multi-stakeholder model that is Icann. They're all of one sort of project, if you will, from the GAC perspective. Very quickly, the GAC support staff put together a tracking tool, stealing much of that from the great work of the human rights cross-community efforts that have been underway. And so we've had a very good tool to support the GAC from early on. I think what a number of other communities have recognized, like the GAC did, is that about 30–35% of all the recommendations that have come down are already things that many communities are doing in one way, shape, or form. And that's certainly true of the GAC. So we were very quickly, in short order, able to check the box and say, wow, the GAC has already complied with or implemented a good 30% of some of those initial recommendations. Now, others, of course, it's a much longer haul. There have been recent discussions among SO and AC chairs about how there can be collaborative efforts on a number of the Workstream 2 recommendations, for example. So I think that in any way, shape, or form, the GAC is largely involved in all of those discussions, both internally as well as externally. I think there's still a lot of work to do for the community. The GAC's not devoting specific time during Icann 71 to that because it's a policy forum, but it certainly is high on the priority list in terms of the committee's work.
Thanks for that, Rob. With that, I would like to open it up for any questions for Rob about the GAC's work. I don't see any hands, but I encourage you to raise them if you have anything you want to discuss.
And as we wait for that, just real quickly, Melissa, I'd also like to put in a commercial for anyone in attendance here, specifically for those of you who are new. And that is a very interesting way to sort of observe how the GAC works is to sit in on GAC communique drafting. This week there's going to be, or in the coming meeting week, there'll be over 5 hours of session discussions just on the communique itself. And of course, the other highlight of the meeting week is the GAC board meeting. So I hope that many people will find the time in their schedules to attend that as well. Thanks.
Very valuable commercial indeed. Miriam, I don't see any hands raised. Am I missing anyone?
No, you're not, Melissa. I don't see any as well.
All right, Rob, we're going to tell you goodbye. And we are going to move on to the Root Server System Advisory Committee, the Rsac. This is an advisory committee to the Icann board about the operation of the root name servers in the domain name system. And I have Ozan Shaheen joining me. Hi, Ozan.
Hi, Melissa.
So let's dive right in. What are the current areas of focus for the Rsac?
So let me talk about the 2 ongoing work parties undertaken by the Rsac and the Rsac Caucus. One of them is studying the effects and mitigations of a rogue root server operator. And this work party is building on Rsac 37, a previously published Rsac advisory, and it's examining scenarios where a root server operator or somebody acting as a root server operator serves incorrect root zone data or violates any of the 11 principles outlined in Rsac 37. And after more than a year's work, this work party is now ready to submit its output to Rsac for a vote and then publication. And the other work party is tasked with developing a tool or set of tools that can easily measure the local perspective of the root server system at various locations or points on the internet. Again, part of the work here is complementary to the work described in a previously published Rsac advisory, namely Rsac 47, the Rsac advisory on metrics for DNS root servers and root server system. And the local perspective tool work party is also nearing the completion of its work. Besides the two work parties, other priorities for Rsac have been reporting on the implementation of recommendations from its second organizational review. Rsac submits implementation progress reports to the board Organizational Effectiveness Committee every 6 months, and the third progress report has been prepared and will be submitted shortly. And lastly, Rsac is in the process of developing an Rsac Caucus member recognition program in order to recognize the contributions of the Rsac Caucus members who spend significant time on Rsac Caucus activities, and also to encourage new Rsac Caucus members to engage with the rest of the group.
So let me ask you this, Ozan. Will any of this work be done in session during Icann 71? Does the Rsac have sessions on the calendar?
Yes, indeed, there will be an Rsac work session at Icann 71 on Tuesday, the second day of the meeting. The main focus will be on finalizing the output document of the local perspective tool work party that I had mentioned. So it's a work session for the Rsac and Rsac Caucus members, and it is also open for everyone else to join as an observer.
Fantastic. If anyone is interested in the Rsac's work, where would you direct them? Where should they go to learn more and get up to speed?
I'll drop the link in a minute to Rsac and Rsac Caucus web pages. So this is where you can find the documentations, publications relating to these groups. But I would highly encourage Icann community members who are interested in the DNS root zone, and especially the technical side of the work. It's a good opportunity, in my view, Melissa, to observe how the root server operators, operator representatives, and other DNS root server system experts work together to publish documents. And since Rsac Caucus is an open group, if there are any community members who are considering applying to become an Rsac Caucus member, this is again a good opportunity to attend the meeting and make a better informed decision.
Great advice, Ozan. Thank you for that. Now I'd like to open it up for questions. Again, please raise your hand if you'd like to ask Ozan a question. I'm not seeing any. Miriam, will you confirm for me?
I can confirm, Melissa, none.
All right. With that, we're going to say goodbye to you for now, Ozan. And we are going to turn to our final policy team member, who is going to discuss the Security and Stability Advisory Committee, the Rsac. This is an advisory committee to the Icann board, and its activities relate to the security and integrity of the Internet's naming and address allocation systems. I have Danielle Rutherford with me now. Hi, Danielle.
Hi, Melissa.
All right. So let's dive into Rsac's most recent publications. What have they done most recently?
Recently, the Rsac published actually during the week of Icann 70, SAC 115 and SAC 116. SAC 116 was a brief input to the SSR2 final report public comment, and SAC 115 is actually a longer Rsac report proposing a framework for an interoperable approach to handling abuse in the DNS. You can expect to see a more detailed briefing on SAC 115 during the Rsac's public session during Icann 71 in the next coming weeks.
Fantastic. So anyone who's interested in learning more should certainly attend that. Will you drop the link to that session in the chat?
Absolutely, Melissa.
Fantastic. Do we anticipate any new publications at Icann 71?
Not at this time. The Rsac has several active work parties on routing security, exploring the possibility of a root service early warning system, and a work party supporting Epdp Phase 2A. But at this time, we're not expecting any publications before or during Icann 71.
Good to know. Does the Rsac have any other sessions planned that you haven't yet mentioned at the policy forum?
So we will be doing the regular public session for the community where we will give, like I said, the detailed briefing on SAC 115. You can also expect a detailed update on the name collision analysis project and where we stand in study 2, as well as updates from Rsac members on current work parties. The Rsac is also sponsoring the DNS Sec and Security Workshop. during Icann 71, and that is open to anyone in the community with an interest in DNSSEC deployment and any sort of emerging security topics related to DNSSEC security.
Lovely. Do you have any other tips to share in preparation for Icann 71?
Read SAC 115. Please come with your questions. And if there's any other questions, I'll put the links to the SAC's website and SAC's publications for the webinar users in the chat.
Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions to Danielle specifically. Please raise your hand. Please, please. All right, well, I'm not seeing any hands. So we are going to move to the panel view for a final opportunity for Q&A to any of our presenters. I ask all our presenters turn on their cameras at this time. They're slowly going to pop into view. And I will actually hand the floor over to Miriam to lay out any questions that have come up during our discussions. Miriam.
Hi, Melissa. We do not have questions at this point, but once we do, I will let you know. Thank you.
All right, everyone participating with us today. I see Mary Wong's hand is up. Mary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Melissa. Hi, everybody. This is Mary Wong from Policy. I am not impersonating a member of the audience, but I did want to congratulate my colleagues here for a very engaging, informative presentation. I also wanted to bring up for everyone attending the webinar the fact that our team also supports a number of other groups and efforts across the community. And so I was wondering if Carlos, whose team leads these efforts, wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about whether we're going to see someone receive the Community Excellence Award next week. And also, given that we have 3 plenary sessions on the schedule, how that is going and what groups are involved in that planning.
Thank you, Mary, and appreciate the question. So as Mary mentioned, within the policy team, we have a smaller team that works on projects that impact the totality of the Ican community. And one of those projects is managing all of our community recognition programming. Every Ican meeting, we take some time to acknowledge Ican community members in some way or another. During the policy forum, this has traditionally been the moment in the year when we recognize the winners of the Ican Community Excellence Award. And actually, my colleague Ozan up here, he manages that work. And I just get to tell you all about it. We'll have an announcement next week. You'll see blog posts and videos, and working across Ican.org, we're able to recognize the contributions of our community members to the multi-stakeholder model. The second initiative that our team leads, again, for the benefit of Ican, is planning for plenary sessions. Ican 71 features 3 plenary sessions. These are selected by the community. So the community groups propose topics, and the chairs of the SOACs consider them, as well as other appointed representatives during the Ican public meeting planning process. On Monday, we'll have a session dedicated to the impact of regulatory developments on Ican policy topics. We'll see participants from governments explaining some of the regulatory developments that have impacted Ican's work. And you'll see respondents from different SO and AC groups. On Tuesday, we'll have a session exploring Ican's multi-stakeholder model within the internet governance ecosystem. This seeks to build on the evolving the multi-stakeholder model work that the Ican board facilitated, as well as some of the conversations that are happening related to the Ican strategic plan and how we're seeing trends impact the internet governance ecosystem. So definitely tune in for that. It'll be a very good conversation. It'll be a mix of representatives from the Ican community, as well as outsiders who will give us an overview of their perceptions of the multi-stakeholder model. And then Thursday, we have a more technical plenary session, but it is an important topic, and that's understanding reputation blocklist providers. So we'll have several speakers from reputation blocklists, explaining what RBLs do and how they function, and how the Ican community interacts with RBLs and the internet governance ecosystem as a whole. And then again, we'll have perspectives from different Ican communities and how they engage with RBLs. So definitely check out the schedule. Be sure to register first so that you can access those participation links. We have participation guides if you need to become acquainted with Zoom tools or the interpretation functionality as well. And make sure you subscribe for the daily newsletters. This will be your way to stay connected and receive information every day. And just make sure to visit the website. So thank you for the question, Mary.
And thank you for such a detailed response, Carlos. Miriam, I'm going to ask you one more time if there's any questions in the chat. I'd also like to do one last call for raised hands in the Zoom room. While we wait to navigate that last call, just on a note for the team you see here today, we are going to ask that you give us some feedback on if you guys liked the change to the format. There's going to be a quick link dropped in the chat. We ask that you take a second and let us know if you loved it, if you didn't, what you'd like to see us do different, because we're here to support and collaborate with you, the community. So with that, last call for questions. Miriam, do we have any?
Melissa, no, we don't. We just have comments of people loving the format. So well done to everyone. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to David.
Thank you very much, everyone, and the team. We were trying to build a little more excitement for the Virtual Policy Forum Ican 71. Making it a little more interesting for you so that you could hear from the various team members. But of course, we didn't have the standard PowerPoint slides, yet if you want the substance and the background information, we do have 3 very useful guides for you. One, of course, is the Ican 71 Policy Outlook Report. This is done to give you the preview of the activities expected at Ican 71. The Ccnso Policy Briefing Book, of course, provides more of the detailed aspects of the PDPs under activity and information generated by the Council. And of course, the schedule for Prep Week. This is the last day of Prep Week, the 10 sessions to help you prepare. And to that extent, this will provide the documentation that you might need to add to the various items in the chat that were placed by the team. With that, the plenary sessions, to remind you of that, we thank Carlos and others for giving us some background of these on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. The topics are selected by the community and a very important time for the everyone to get together in that community discussion to hear these topics. We also would ask that you complete the survey that relates to this format, as we're trying to make it as informative and interaction, both from a document point of view, as well as a presentation point of view. So that would be very helpful. Of course, the recordings and the slides and materials will be posted on the Ican website as you see it here. With that, I would like to thank everyone for their time and attention, for enjoying with us our chance to talk about our work with you and your work with us. And with that, I wish everyone a good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be. See you soon at the Ican 71, a virtual policy forum. And I hope everyone's excited as we are to have that happen. Thank you so very much.